Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Ehsan Rizwi, um, and I will be the speaker for the remaining days of Ramadan 2022. I'm blessed to have this opportunity to speak to you today, as well as for a little less than 2 weeks from now. And the topic that I have chosen to talk about this year is societal well-being. Um, the the religion and this is we're going to talk about the roadmap to self-purification, but instead of the individual level, we'll be talking about how to go about it at the societal level. Now, the religion of Islam, as we all know, is not just for individuals, but it's actually of a community, a global ummah. And the social interactions, just like our individual actions, they are impactful, and we have a direction in the religion about those. Um, they those interactions extend beyond just ourselves. They extend to our immediate and extended family. They widen to include our neighbors and friends and the local community. Um, it affects our physical environment and also our spiritual well-being. There are some concepts that deal with our relationship with our neighbors, our family members, our friends, our community members, people we live with, people we share time with. And we will also talk about how to promote goodness in the society and prevent social evils. So without further ado, today specifically, keeping this topic in mind, which is the societal well-being, we will specifically talk about our relationship with our neighbors. So after our individuality, like I said, we're going to be talking about relationship with family, community, how to be an active citizen in the community we live in. But we'll first start off with our relationship with neighbors. And it's fascinating how Islam has actually put a lot of emphasis on our relationship, our interaction, the way we interact with our neighbors. And there are many narrations and traditions about it as well. And before we start on it, we want to probably define neighbors. What constitute a neighbor? Is it someone who's just next to your house? Is it someone who is, I don't know, a kilometer away from your house? What constitutes a neighbor? Well, according to a tradition of Imam Ali alayhi salam, a neighborhood actually includes 40 houses on all four sides. It's 40 houses on all four sides. And neighbors are like an extended family because we directly impact one another's life. Good neighbors can greatly improve the quality of life that we of those who live in the neighborhood. They could sometimes, there are some problematic neighbors as well who are either noisy or dirty, and they're not throwing the garbage out in the right time in the right place, and they can disturb the peace and quiet of the entire neighborhood as well. So we definitely want to learn how to be a good neighbor, and then make sure that no one is bothered because of our presence, because of us being a neighbor as well. Imam Ali alayhi salam has again, in one of his narration, he said, "Fear Allah and keep Allah in mind in the matter of your neighbors, because they were the subject of Rasulullah's advice. He advised in their favor so much that we thought we allowed them a share in inheritance." Now imagine Imam Ali is actually talking about the status of neighbors in Islam, And he's saying it was so much so that we sometimes would think that maybe we would have to give them a share in our inheritance. And obviously, this is just to um, um, paint that picture. This is to say how much importance has been put in having good relationship with neighbors, in making sure that the rights that the neighbors have upon us are being fulfilled in the right way. We're not only cognizant of those rights, but we're also making sure giving it 100. Giving our 100% of ourselves in fulfilling those rights and obligations. So we definitely see like narrations and the verses in the Quran as well, which talks about goodness towards one's neighbor. We also get those teachings from the life of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. So one narration goes, says that Sayyidah Fatima, daughter of our holy prophet, she was actually standing in prayers for a very, very long time. And she was praying for all the believing men and women sincerely, mentioning some of them even by their name. Now, her young son was watching this, her young son meaning Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and he asked her why she prayed for others before praying for herself. To which Sayyidah Fatima replied, well, first the neighbors and then the people of the home. So imagine from this story, this is such a good lesson for us. This Lady Fatima is actually role modeling the behavior for all the Muslims here. She's saying that even if I am praying and I am praying for a long time, the neighbors, they come first. I am preparing for their well-being before I can actually pray even for my household. Now, being good neighbors, especially to those who is just not limited to people who share the same faith. If you are good neighbors, especially to those who are non-Muslim today's age, can actually be extremely, it's actually recommended, lots of benefits, and you are basically showing them that Muslims are peaceful and good citizens, and that our faith actually encourages that kind of behavior, right? It's not just you being basically Islam is talking about how to be of a good character, and not just towards yourself, towards your individuality, or towards your own community members, or just towards your own family members, but the good behavior, the goodness of the behavior actually extends to the wider community, no matter what your race, creed, citizenship status, color is. And the religion encourages us to be helpful and loving to all people around us. And like I said, we're specifically talking about the neighbors, and Islam actually outlines and portrays, outlines a specific rights of the neighbors. It stipulates what should happen in those interactions with your neighbors, how you should be conducting yourself around your neighbors. Because and we already know there is like a lot of negative impression about the way Islam has been portrayed right now. So that can also, like, this is another benefit of you being good to your neighbors, is to promote a better image of Islam. Now, Rasulullah has said, one should respect his neighbor as he respects his mother. Now, imagine the status of a mother in the religion of Islam. We have so many narrations. We've studied them in detail as well. We know the status of a mother in Islam is absolutely at a very high level. And so when Rasulullah is actually comparing the level of respect that we should give to a neighbor with the respect that should be given to a mother speaks volumes about what importance has been put in the interaction with neighbors. Now, what could be some of the ways where you could actually practically implement those concepts, right? So let's say you have a neighbor and you spot them when you're going, let's say, to grocery shopping, or you're coming from the grocery shopping and you look at them and they're carrying their groceries. Well, go and help them. You can probably help them put groceries in their car, or if they're at home and they're trying to unload, you can actually help them in unloading those groceries from their car. Let's say if you haven't seen, another way would be if you haven't seen your neighbor for a long time, you can actually go and ask them about their health, inquire them if they're okay and if they need any help or support. Because oftentimes people feel the pain, but they're very reluctant to talk about it or ask for help. So this is something that you can actually do, and portray that behavior that Islam puts an emphasis on. If you think of something that will promote promote a healthy relationship in the neighborhood amongst neighbors, then go ahead and do it. For example, one thing could be cleanliness. If you have a shared courtyard, a shared parking lot, make sure that you go out of your way to keep it clean. You don't throw garbage there. You respect parking spots. Let's say if there's a shared parking spot, you share a common space, then be mindful of their rights. So those are some of the things that you can do practically to ensure good behavior towards your neighbors. We've talked about how to define neighbors, right? According to Imam Ali, one of the narration, like I said, was that 40 houses on all four sides. But it's just not limited to that. The Quran also mentions companions at your side. Now, what does that mean? Companions at your side. So whosoever, now this could be someone who's actually just sitting by your side in a mosque, let's say, or in a public space. Let's say you are, in a transit bus and there's someone sitting by your side for a particular journey. That person becomes a companion by your side as well. When the Quran mentions the companion at your side terminology, it means that we need to take care of them as well. They have certain rights upon us. We have to make sure that we are not we're not being troublesome to them. Let's say if you are on a journey with someone else who's sitting by your side as well, you want to make sure that you're not hurting them. They have their own space. You're not being noisy. You're not being loud, and you are maintaining you basically kind of maintaining your conduct in a professional manner, and making sure that you have a regard for that individual who you're sharing some space with. Now, there are many stories as well where the Ahlul Bayt has taught us how we can be good to our neighbors. Even in Risalatul Haqq, which is a book by our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, he actually mentions the duties one has towards various segments of the community, including neighbors, right? So one of the right that he said is, and I quote, "The right of your neighbor is that you guard him, his property, when he is absent, honor him when he is present, and help him when he is wrong." So if you just try to examine this particular quote, Imam is saying that it's actually our responsibility. It becomes our duty to actually protect someone's property, that neighbor's property, if he is not home. So if he has left for a week or 2 weeks, it becomes our duty to make sure that we are looking over his valuables, his or her valuables. And and when he says, and when he's present, you have to conduct yourself in a way that you are being respectful to that person. And again, if they are going through troubled times, if they need support, then you are there to offer that support as well. The quote, the tradition goes on and says, you should not go after anything of his that is shameful for you. If you know of any evil from him, you should conceal it. If you know that he will accept your advice, you should advise him. You should not leave him in difficulty. You should release him from his troubles. You should forgive his mistake, and you should keep his company generously. So all things you can see, like in this entire tradition, he is giving us what duties we have towards our neighbor, and that includes from being helpful, that includes from being protective of that includes being protective of his valuables when he is not there, he or she is not there. That includes hiding his bad habits if he has any, and that includes helping them in times of their need. Now, obviously, these are great duties, but just imagine if everyone did that, how powerful the bonding would be in neighborhoods, how people would be so helpful to each other, and this would automatically promote a much stronger and a healthier community. Because we have to understand the fact that individuals alone can't do much, right? Individuals, when they combine with different other individuals with a group, they grow, and if they have a certain relationship, a certain bond between them, their impact actually grows even further. So if 2 individuals or 3 individuals are making sure that they are making sure that they keep the shared spaces of a neighborhood clean, this will have an impact. If an individual is doing, obviously the impact would be there too, but a much smaller scale. But if they're doing it all together in a systematic way, in a regular way, in a periodic fashion, then the impact would be much larger. And this is what this is all about as well. Being neighborly affects us in this world, and it grows that impact. But it's not just, it doesn't just stop there. For us Muslims, this impacts us in the hereafter as well, because we are actually trying to obey and follow the guidelines given to us in the Quran, in a Hadith, and by the behavior of our Ahlul Bayt. As much as we want to be safe with those around us, whatever we do in our life will affect what kind of neighbor we will have in our graves as well. So it's very important to be among those who are actually positive, right? So even if your dad, so Imam Ali actually has a narration related to that as well. And he said, and I quote, avoid burying your dead near someone evil, for surely a good neighbor benefits you in the next world, just as he benefits you in this world. So again, pretty much summarizes that concept. If you have a good neighbor, it's a great fortune, it's a great blessing to have a good neighbor. And that just doesn't hold true when you're alive, but also when you're dead. So if you have someone who was a nice person and your grave is right next to that person, then you will have benefits and blessings just because of that fact. And that's why it's actually recommended in this verse as well, to make sure that you are not buried with someone who is commonly known as who is not regarded as a good person. So just to conclude, just to go over some of the main points that we discussed as well, like I said, we're talking about societal well-being, which means how do we purify ourselves, not just at the individual level, but also at the community level, at the societal level, which means there are certain interactions as an individual that we have with others, and that includes lots of segments of the society. It extends beyond your immediate family members. It extends to, obviously, family is there after your individual self, the family is there, and then your relatives, but it extends even beyond that. So it extends to your neighbors, and that's what we were actually talking about today. We're talking about how do we interact with our relatives, what does the Quran and the Hadith mention. We also talked about the tradition by Imam Ali in Risalatul Hukuk, in which he said like how you should be the guardian of your neighbor if he's not there, how you should protect their valuables, their house, and if he's there, if he or she is there in front of you, how you should be supportive and basically guard their honor and be supportive to them. So again, being good to neighbors is actually greatly emphasized, and good deeds in this world, if you do it with a good intention, it will not also make you a good neighbor to those buried around you. And that's when we also studied one narration by Imam Ali, where it's actually recommended to be buried, to bury someone or bury your good loved ones around someone who is actually known to be a good person as well. One other thing is the definition of neighbor. Imam Ali said, 40 houses on all the four sides are considered to be neighbors, but Quran doesn't stop there. Quran also says that you should also care about people who are actually just companions at your side. And what does that mean? That means anyone who's sharing, let's say, a journey with you on a public transit bus, someone who's sitting next to you at a mosque, so all those people who you interact with on a daily basis, or you share a space with on a daily basis, they're companions at your side, and you have duties towards them, and you have to be mindful of how you are making sure that they are not bothered by your presence, but they feel good about your presence. And then we also talked about the great benefits that this can have as a whole. Like if you're like I said, I gave you the example of your neighborhood. If you're trying to keep your neighborhood clean, you can do only so much as an individual. But if you're good to your neighbors, maybe they will also help you and be supportive of that. And as a community, the impact will be even much larger. If you have a shared space, shared courtyard, shared parking space, they can be clean. That way, you will have a stronger bond, and you will be means of support to each other. So with that, and then we also talked about the life of Ahlul Bayt. In the light of Ahlul Bayt, Sayyidah Fatima, we talked about the story of Sayyidah Fatima, Imam Hassan, how they put neighbors ahead of their own family member while they prayed for long times. So all these things are actually pointing to the same fact that there's a lot of emphasis on goodness towards our neighbors that Islam puts. There are lots of narrations and traditions that actually speak volumes about the interactions. And this is one way towards achieving that societal well-being that we are going to be talking about for the rest of the day. So I'll conclude this here now. Like I said, we will be talking about societal well-being in these days as well. These are blessed nights. I wish you all a very blessed Ramadan. Hopefully it's been going well for you, and it's important for us to learn new concepts and to make sure, even if they're older concepts, it's important for us to reiterate those concepts, ingrain them in our minds, and make sure we can actually follow them. Because the first step is really to understand those concepts deeply, and then try to follow our life according to those principles. That is the only way of achieving self-purification. With that, I'd like to conclude the session for today, and I'll see you tomorrow, inshallah. Take care of yourself.